Hey everyone, I'm Kelsey with M Bloom Felt Studio, and today we're going to make a felt ranunculus. My pattern for this flower is available on my website, which is linked in the description below, but this video will show you the assembly of the cut pieces only. Before we begin, let's cover the materials needed. You will need felt, a high quality wool blend is recommended, 2 gauge floral wire, 2 22 gauge floral wire, floral tape, wire cutters, fabric scissors, a 1.8 inch foam ball, fabric stiffener, a hot glue gun and hot glue, and you will also need a heat tool with a rounded tip. I'm using a modified soldering iron in the video, which is what I use for the volume of flowers that I do, but I have a link in the description below for one that I recommend, or you could just use a curling iron with a rounded tip as well. Let's get started. The first step of making your ranunculus is to prepare all of your pieces for spraying with fabric stiffener. So I have all of my petals sorted into their size and color, and I'm going to attach my 2 leaves to 22 gauge wire. This way I can spray them with the fabric stiffener and I don't have to worry about a stiff leaf being added to a wire later on. So this is best to do right off the bat. Position a 22 gauge wire about halfway to 2/3 of the way up your leaf, and then add a line of glue with your hot glue gun over the wire. Fold that leaf in half and then set it aside to dry before unfolding it. Repeat the same thing with the small leaf, and I'm going to put the wire just about 1/4 of the way up that small leaf. Once your leaf is dry, you can go ahead and open that back up. And now we're going to put all of our petals and our 2 leaves on a spray-safe surface like cardboard, along with my 2 leaves attached to the 22 gauge wire. And what I'm going to do now is just spray everything down with this fabric stiffener. Quick tip, you can just spray it from the bottle, but I actually put mine in a spray bottle, which makes spraying all of these pieces with the volume just a little bit easier. I feel like it goes a little bit faster. So spray all of your pieces, and then you can let them dry for 2 to 3 hours air drying, or you can go over them with an iron sandwiched in parchment paper on low heat for about 5 minutes, and they should be dry. Once all your petals have dried, the next step is to use your heat tool to curl all of the petals. So this is my modified soldering iron, but you can use the fabric heat tool or even just a regular curling iron with a rounded tip. I've linked a couple of tools in the description below, as well as on my supplies list, so be sure to check that out. So this is what it should look like after you have rounded each of your petals. Keep them sorted by size and color to stay organized, and once everything is curled, we'll go ahead and start on the assembly of the flower. Alrighty, so now all of my pieces are curled. I just think it adds a really nice texture and helps make the flower look so much more realistic. So I'm going to set aside these curling tools for now, and we can get started on the really fun part of assembling your flower. You're going to need a thick 2 gauge wire, and this is a styrofoam ball. It's 1.8 inches. You can find this at Michael's or order on Amazon for a big pack of them, and I have a link for that below. But basically what we're going to do is poke a hole through the center with your stem. You'll push it almost all of the way to the top. I can kind of feel it there, but I'm not poking it out of the top. Remove the stem, fill this with hot glue, and then you can insert the stem again and add a little bit more glue around the base to hold that stem in. Then set it aside and let that dry for a minute. So I will be demonstrating a 3-toned ranunculus. I have a light green, a peach color, and then my darker orange. I do want to point out, you could make your ranunculus as many colors or shades as you want. And you would do that by cutting each layer a different color. It's up to you, or you can make them all the same. The most important thing that you keep track of is that each layer has the correct quantity of petals. So as I do the video, I will tell you how many petals go on each layer in what size. And I also have it written down in the written tutorial to keep things organized and hopefully not too chaotic. So the very first layer of your ranunculus, you'll be using your small size, and I'm going to do this nice light pistachio green. Cover the very top center, that way you don't see the styrofoam ball. I'm going to glue this on, and then I'm going to do 3 of these small greens in a circle around, and they're just going to kind of pop up a little bit, as you can see. And then I'm going to overlap that last one underneath the first. So it will end up looking like that. If you want to practice before you glue, this is a little bit tricky, but you can also pull off the pieces until you get it the correct shape that you want. So that's what it should look like once you have it all glued down. So we'll glue that first piece, add glue all over. Add it to the center. And because I'm going to overlap, I'm going to tuck the last piece underneath my very first petal. I'm just going to put glue on one side of this, glue it down. So I have one unglued edge, and it should just pop up just a little bit there. The edge of the circle should be in the center of that first piece we glued down. Next, I'm going to add glue all over my second piece, except for the very top edge. So I have it on about a little over 3/4 of this circle. If you can see, this top edge does not have glue. So I'm going to overlap, just trying to eyeball it and create equal spacing. And my next piece is going to be glued just like that. And then I'm going to tuck it underneath and secure it with some glue. So again, glue on almost the entire piece except for that very top edge. Add a little bit of glue to that edge of the first petal and then overlap. Then I can use my fingers to adjust where I need. So it kind of looks like a little party hat. It's raised up a little bit off the ball, and that is my very first layer. So one in the center to hide the foam, and then 3 small around. So I have my first layer on, and now I'm ready to add the rest of my layers. Before we get started, I just want to point out that the spacing of your layers is very, very important. It makes a big difference for the finished look of the flower. Here's an example. I don't have my leaves added yet, but I just wanted to show you that the first 5 layers on your ranunculus are all going to be the same height. So I have them straight across. And then my last layers, I'm slowly increasing that spacing as I work my way down the flower, but you want it to be very slight. Otherwise, I found it kind of just throws the whole look of the flower off. But once you make 1 or 2, you'll kind of get the hang of how you want the spacing to look. And maybe you change it a little to create some variety within your bouquet. But the first 5 layers, I'm trying to keep them all the same, and then just very, very, very small spacing as I go down. So keep that in mind. And I'll remind you what to do with the height as we add each layer. So the first layer was 3 small, and the next layer is going to be 4 small. And since my flower has 3 colors, I'm moving on to my small shade of peach. So these are going to be around the center, lined up height-wise with my first 3. So I'm going to add glue almost all the way to the top of my petal to create that closed look on the ranunculus flower. And I'm going to overlap that last piece. I'm going to tuck it underneath the first edge. So glue almost all the way to the top of your ranunculus, just that top edge. And this just kind of creates that bulb look on the flower itself. So this edge is unglued. Now I can go back, add a little bit of glue to my first petal and overlap it over the last one. And if you want your petals to lay down a little bit more, like I want this one to be pushed down a little bit more, so I'm just going to sneak my hot glue gun in there, add a little bit more glue and adjust that. Because I really like the closed look of that bulb for the very center of the ranunculus. If you want to open up your petals more, then you don't have to glue them so close to the top, but I like to do that for the very center. Second layer complete. So my next layer is a row of 6 small with this peach color, and then followed by another row of 6. And I'm going to keep them all at the same height. So lined up with the top and glued also almost to the top there, except for that very top edge. So that's my third layer of 6 small pieces, followed by one more layer of small 6 pieces, same height. I also want to mention when I add a new layer, I'm putting it in between the 2 petals on the layer prior. Okay, that's it for my small petals. So I have 3, 4, 6, 6, all size small. And now I'm going to add my last row of my second color. And this is in medium size, and it's going to be a row of 6. Also the same height as all of these petals beforehand. So again, I also have the same glue pattern of almost the entire petal except for that top edge. Leave one side undone, glue it in between at the same height as the petals prior, work your way around, and then tuck it under the first petal. Okay, so that is my 5th layer of 6 medium-sized petals. Now that we're getting started on layer 6, we're going to start spacing the layers down the flower. And it's going to be very, very, very small spacing. I would say it's maybe 1/8 of an inch, almost imperceptible. But as you add the layers, it will start being noticeable that your petals are moving down and the flower is opening up. So that is the look that we're trying to achieve here. So add this next layer, which is medium. If you're making a 3 shaded ranunculus, it's going to be your 3rd color. So you can also add the glue as close to the top or closer to the top if you want that closed ranunculus bulb look, or you can make it a little bit more open to start these next layers. I think my first layer is still pretty closed, and then as I add these next ones, I'm going to move that glue line a little bit lower to open up the petals. So see there, it's just very, very, very slightly lower than that layer above it, and leaving one side open so I can tuck that last petal underneath. So 6 petals here. So that's my completed 6th layer. I also want to point out that as you're adding layers, it's important to keep gluing on the underside of each petal. That way you continue that rounded shape of the flower. If you notice that some of your pieces are sticking off the styrofoam, kind of like this one is, just add some extra glue all the way around. I usually do this after maybe every other layer. Depends on how my petals are sticking to the foam. And then I'm just going to squeeze around it to keep that circular shape. Okay, that's better. Now my 7th layer is a layer of 7 medium. And these will be spaced just slightly lower than that layer above it. And now my last layer of medium petals will be a layer of 7, slightly lower again than the layer above it. Okay, so I have 8 layers on my ranunculus now. Now I'm getting started on my last 3 layers. They're all size large and they're all layers of 6. So that's easy to keep track of. So 6, 6, 6, all a little bit lower than the previous layer, tucking that first petal over the last one. Another layer of 6 large. Here's what it's looking like so far, and now I have one more layer of 6 large to go. Okay, and that's my last layer of large petals. Now I'm just going to add a little bit more glue along this bottom edge. As you can see, they're kind of popping up there, and then squish them down to hold them in place. Okay, so here is my finished ranunculus with just the petals. I still have to add the leaves. Just have some small little bits of glue I'm pulling off here, but this is what it looks like. Here's all of my layers with the spacing. So I made these first 5 straight across, and then really small spacing, lowering each layer here as I worked my way down. So now all that's left is to add the leaves. First, we're going to add the sepal to the underside of the flower, thread that up your stem, and then add the glue. I kind of like to have each little leaf poking off there, but I made sure to add enough glue around the center to hide that foam. And now we're just going to use floral tape to attach our leaves. So it doesn't matter which one you add first, but I'm going to hold it up against my stem, position it where I want it. And then to activate your the wax on the tape, you're just going to stretch it out. I like to wrap it around several times in the same spot to make sure it's sticking. And then I start working my way down the flower. Once you reach the end, you can clip it with your wire cutters and then secure that with extra glue if you need to. But if I clip it a little bit above where that tape ends, it usually stays put there. And here is what my finished ranunculus flower looks like. Now you know how to make a felt ranunculus. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and be sure to like and subscribe for more tutorials. Thanks so much for crafting with me.